We're gonna try this again.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Did
there
it
we go.
work? Here we go.
It worked.
Yay, fantastic. That's great. So we
Awesome.
can see each other, we can hear each other. It's
Yes.
great. I love it. I love it.
Yes.
Oh, we made it. We made it. And also, this is all recording too, so we can, and we're going to share this later on, correct? And so people be able to access it.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. So
So
whenever
I
we
think
start is the time in which it's supposed to start. So here we
we
are.
are. Hey, how you doing?
Good. Good. Good to
Good.
see you. Good to be with you in your energy and in the energy of the people who are tuning in, who need to hear whatever it is that we're going to share today. It's great. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we're having what, a conversation about grief and gratitude, hey?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I was thinking kind of kick this off. I
Hmm.
wanted to share just something from a book that has been a tremendous resource for me
Uh-huh.
for years in my own personal life, but also in the way that I serve others as a massage therapist and a Qigong instructor. It's a
Hmm.
book called Acupuncture for Emotional Healing by Michael Reed Gach, PhD, with Beth Ann Henning as
Hmm.
well. And so there's this great chapter on grief. And he says grief is a natural process or natural response to loss, which is an inevitable aspect of life. When you lose someone or something you love, the grieving process enables you to let go and work through your conflicting feelings. For example, when someone you love dies from a serious illness that lasted a long time, you may feel a sense of relief that their suffering is over. You may also feel sadness and pain knowing you will never be together again. Divorce is another example of a loss where one might have conflicted feelings during the grieving process. In divorce, family ties are severed, but emotional bonds remain. You may feel relieved to be free of an unhealthy marriage, but being partnerless leaves you lonely. Death and divorce are obvious reasons to grieve. Less obvious reasons are loss of a pet, a major move, retirement, miscarriage, loss of trust, or loss of a sense of spiritual connection.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot. There's a lot right there to unpack.
A lot
In
right there to
this.
unpack.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's the thing about loss is that there's so many different levels to it and different types of loss.
Hmm.
You know, that's the first thing that springs to mind for me. What about that piece really, hits for you as a core piece?
Well, that what you just said, and also that there can just be these conflicting feelings that you have when you're experiencing loss.
Hmm.
That it's such a complicated, multi-layered, multifaceted feeling and experience when you're dealing with grief and loss. And from my own experience, like right now, I think that one of the reasons why we decided to have this conversation is because you were responding to a dance video that I made with around the topic of grief and loss, or grief and gratitude, and how you can feel those two things simultaneously. But the really important word there is feeling and allowing yourself to feel, not trying to censor oneself from feeling what is naturally trying to become expressed, and allowing that process to play out. That's the interesting thing I think about us as living, breathing organisms, right? We have these processes that are physical, but also emotional and mental. There's the dense energies and the more subtler energies are all at play, and there's a natural wisdom about that.
Hmm.
And I think it's important that we allow that wisdom to express itself and to play out and not interfere with it. so that the process can really move through us. And I think sometimes we can kind of get in the way of our own healing because we think that grief and loss is supposed to look and feel a certain way, and we might fight it instead of just being with it, making friends with it.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. This week was a really hard week for a
Yeah.
lot of people here, where I am in Hawaii. And even though I was not on the island with the wildfires, it has very much affected all of us as a community. And what is, I have friends there. I have people on the Big Island and on Maui who, for days, I actually didn't know, where they were, all of that. And as a trauma therapist, I know that people right now, especially when an initial loss happens, they are in shock. They're trying to come to grips with what happened, and there's a mix of emotions and not knowing. And one of the things that I was reflecting on is, especially when exactly what you said, when a loss occurs, we're going to feel it on multiple levels. And if we stop that feeling, especially in our bodies, then we don't allow that natural healing process, and that's a very biological process as well, with emotional processing. And so one of the things that I felt like I was called to do this week, because people are like, what kind of interventions are you going to have, and how are you going to help support people? And I said, first, there needs to be a space for people just to be able to feel, just to cry if they need to cry, you know, rage if they need to rage, be held, whatever that means. Because the emotion, when we lose something, there's many of them, but they need to flow through our body. And if they don't, then, I'm speaking as a therapist now, what ends up happening is that we end up having further problems because we're denying this natural healing process.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what that makes me think of how when we don't, what you're describing is a flow of energy,
Mhm.
right? And energy is meant to flow freely through the body, through all of the systems. And when we impede that, then energy becomes stuck and stagnant. So I think that there's an emotional toll that comes with that. And then there's also how that affects the body physically, right? I think when we don't allow ourselves to feel our feelings, we become just sort of held like in suspended animation. And so what happens too is that it is an increase of tension in the body, tension, pain, physical pain, discomfort. And, uh, and so I think that doing exactly what you said, allowing giving space for us to feel whatever it is we're feeling and express whatever it is needs to express and don't censor ourselves is such a huge part of the process. And it's complicated. One of the stories I wanted to tell you, remember when I said to you the other day, I was like, oh, remind me to tell you a story?
Yes.
So I used to live in Malibu.
Mhm.
And several years ago, there was a huge fire that ripped through California and it affected Malibu. And for the longest time, people would tell us, my husband and I, when we moved there, that, oh, fires tend to not affect Malibu. Like the fires tend to not jump over the PCH and affect that area because they hadn't had one in, I don't know, 2 decades or so.
Mhm.
Well, that changed that year, and fire ripped through so much of this part of California. I think it was the Woolsey Fire, I think it was called.
Mhm.
And I just remember just what that does to a community. I think it just like what's happening in Maui. It's just an incredibly traumatic experience. And I remember from that time because we didn't lose our house, luckily, and no one on our little block lost their house. But I know people who did, and I'll never forget this guy that I met who was part of my recovery community. he lost his house, and he shared how, in the end, he was actually grateful for that experience and for
Mhm.
having lost that house because he was so unhappy living there, but he didn't know how to change his circumstances or his situation. And this fire gave him the opportunity, and losing all that he, that we're told to hold so dearly, gave him an opportunity to reinvent himself,
Yeah.
to change his life, because he wasn't able to do it on his own steam. Like, he was living a life that he wasn't comfortable with for a long time and just felt like a prisoner to it. And now the universe gave him this opportunity to really do anything that he wanted or needed to do. And so he expressed this feeling of gratitude, which I just thought that was just remarkable, because we're all in our different processes and experience around grief, especially in that kind of a situation. Not everyone is going to be able to touch that bit of gratitude and see that kind of loss as a potential opportunity. But I just want to say that out loud because that is a reality for some people. Um, and that's hard to wrap your mind around, or your heart, especially if you are grieving and suffering around that. But that does exist. So there it is again. That the dance
Yeah.
between grief and gratitude.
Absolutely. And to be a little bit of a nerd, um, social scientists and psychologists have found that people who can reach that space of gratitude and appreciation for what happened, they may not like it. They may not ever have wanted that to necessarily happen. But when they can actually mine the meaning from it and find the gratitude, find the appreciation for the event, that really transforms the event or the loss in such a way that can be beneficial to us mentally. So, it's certainly, like you said, we can't say that to people who have freshly had a loss, because oftentimes they, no, I didn't, that's such a hard concept to sit with.
Yeah,
But I think over time and through the healing process, finding out what is the meaning and how, what can I appreciate about it? How can I be grateful for it is really huge. Yeah. So
yeah,
I love that.
I love that too.
Hmm.
Um, and going back to something I said a moment ago, was that the impetus for this discussion was the dance video. So anyone who hasn't seen my video, go to my page on TikTok, Stephen Washington, I think 6. Or you can even go to my Instagram, Stephen Washington Experience, and see this video I did on grief and gratitude. And one of the reasons why, the main reason why I created that video was because I'd just been having this experience of navigating grief and gratitude as I move through a relationship release, a divorce, a conscious uncoupling with my husband.
Hmm.
And we've been together for about 7.5 years, and married for 5, together for about 7.5 years. And starting in January, we started to discuss splitting. And it's incredibly difficult at the beginning of that process. The level of grief that I felt was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. And I was able to, in this process, was and still am able to hold that sense of loss, and that'll, even to this day, even though I'm much more in acceptance of it and embracing it, it can still like wallop me. Like last night, I was listening to Yo Yo Ma, um, and I was listening to the music from Schindler's List, and all I have to do is hear that, and I'm just weeping. such a beautiful piece of music, but
Yeah.
it opens me up to really feel my feelings. And I didn't and what I started doing was crying because of the music, and I started crying because of my own grief, and that needed to come out. And I realized that this weekend I'm dancing with that level of grief, but I'm also so super grateful for all that this experience of this transformation of this relationship is teaching me. What it's teaching me is priceless,
Hmm.
priceless.
Hmm.
And what I'm learning about myself
Hmm.
at 52, almost 52 years old, what I'm learning about myself, because we never stop learning and growing. As
Yeah.
long as we're breathing, there's a chance, an opportunity for change and transformation. What I'm learning is so precious and so valuable. And there was no other way for me to learn what I'm learning other than through loss
Hmm.
and letting go. And
Yeah.
so I'm tremendously grateful for that. I'm grateful for this new space that I'm living in and this new community that I'm a part of in Los Angeles, and the people that I'm meeting in my building. And as I explore this part of the city, how vibrant it is and how it taps me back into um, who I truly am. I'm a city boy. You know, I was living in the mountains, I was living by the ocean, and that's lovely, but that's not really who I truly am. And
Yeah.
so I'm getting back to me, I'm recovering me.
Hmm.
And so I danced about it in that video and I talk about it because that's how I process emotions and how I feel and what I'm thinking is through movement and expression.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's what got us, Ellen and I, you and I, talking about this and having a deeper conversation about it. And I'm always amazed at how people respond to those videos and how me moving through my process gives people an opportunity to reflect on their own journey, their own process around, in this instance, grief and gratitude or whatever else they're feeling, that duality that we can feel with our emotions.
Right. Right. Stephen, what do you feel are some of the common things that you get in terms of questions or comments from folks, who are watching your videos and watching, the way you express through movement? Because yeah, I'm just curious about that. What are some of the things that they ask?
Well, I think a lot of people are kind of mesmerized by it, hypnotized by it, because it's something that really pulls you in. Because I
Mhm.
think just watching someone express themselves physically is something that gets people's attention and invites them to participate as a viewer, and it touches them in a very deep way. But then when you add language to it,
Mhm.
that adds another layer to it, and it allows people to tap into their own experiences with whatever the topic of the video is. And one of the things that people say oftentimes is that they've stopped dancing in their life, and that
Mhm.
this is an invitation to move their body, to help them move through whatever it is that they're experiencing. And that's the thing, we are in a sense machines that are designed to move.
Mhm.
And culturally, we've been conditioned out of moving. Like dance is something that is part of our cultures, many cultures around the world, and now and it's something people would do within their families, in their intimate settings. But now it's relegated to what, maybe every now and again if you go to a nightclub
Right.
is when people
Right.
dance. But you can dance, you can tap into that anytime, anywhere. Dance
Right.
in your kitchen, dance in your bedroom, dance in your bathroom, dance in the elevator, whatever, whenever you feel it. Listen to your body, because there's such wisdom. So that's one of the things that I commonly hear.
Mhm.
And then just the stories that people share.
Mhm.
Like, I had this one woman, I made this video about changing your mind, that it's never too late to change your mind, no matter
Mhm.
what. And she told everyone that about this experience when she was like, she's now in her 70s or 80s. She talked about how when she was in her late teens, early 20s, she had this opportunity to go from the States to Europe to do some job. It was a big thing. She was going to go for a summer. She got there and it wasn't what they said it was going to be. Where she was going to live was not where what she was expecting. It was substandard, and the job was not what they said it was going to be, and it was just an awful work environment to be in. And so the very following day, she said, "Sorry, I can't do this.
Good for
I
her.
can't do this. I'm out." And she decided to backpack around Europe by herself at like 18. And she said the hardest part about it was telling her family that that's what she
Mhm.
was going to do because they were worried about her. But she said that was her first lesson in the power of changing your mind, and that we all have the ability and the power to do that. No matter what we've agreed to, we can change our mind.
Mhm.
So getting that kind of feedback from people has been really so moving, so powerful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find one of the biggest things, grief. I'm sorry, were you finished? Did you want to share something else? Yeah, I find that one of the things that I love about TikTok in general,
Mhm.
but in terms of really connecting with people, is hearing their stories and realizing the shared humanity that we all have. You know, we may not have experienced the same exact situation, but even hearing, you tell the story of how she just walked in and was like, I'm done. You know, like I've had experiences like that when I'm like, yeah, I had to make that choice. And, so it's a beautiful thing. And I think that's what is also really important about acknowledging that there's different parts to grief, different things to be mined. Like you had said, you've learned so much, you know, um, in the journey, and I know for me that's definitely true. And so when we can mine those things, and then we can say, okay, now I'm making a new choice, or now I'm doing these things.
Mhm.
That's also a very powerful piece, as
Yes.
well as just knowing that other people have experienced similar emotions, if not the same situation.
Right.
Yeah.
So you just had an experience recently where you had that experience of being scammed and you lost money, and that whole journey of navigating that and getting to the other side of that. Because in our personal conversations, you talked about how that has taught you so much. Can you talk about that a bit too? That process.
Yeah. This, I feel like there's been so much, like literally in the past year, I have experienced a lot of loss, and that was the most probably recent one where I've been building my business, and I was so proud of myself for all of the money that I was putting away and preparing for, saving for my business. And one morning, I picked up the phone and someone said that they were law enforcement from U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, and it was this whole thing. And they were very convincing. They, they gave a website that looked like an official FBI website when they transferred calls and this whole thing. And I got very much afraid. And, I know we've talked about how, like, one of the major things I learned from that was realizing that my fear was what kind of carried me further into the scam. But healing that, because I realized I'm human and all of that. But when I lost that money to the scam, it was it was a loss because it represented work that I had put in, trust in myself, me being creative. So, my business started with a loss. I lost, I didn't really lose my job. I was kind of forcibly resigned. But that loss then led me to all these other things. So it was like it was another situation of it. And I could definitely say the best part was recognizing that I could lose that,
Yeah.
have feelings about it, go through a number of, I was angry at myself, I was sad, then I was, grateful that it wasn't more money. Then I reached out to people and, opened myself up for receiving support. There were so many opportunities that came from it. Like we were saying, the gratitude now that I have, even though I would not prefer to go through that same day again, I would not like to
No
be scared out
thanks.
of my mind, you know,
Yeah.
but like I could look back on it and say, I didn't recoup all the money that I lost, but people supported me, people sent me messages. There was a lot of like, this happened to me before, this happened to my grandmother, this happened to my mom. um all of these things that really rushed in from what I perceived as just a loss of money. So sometimes, again, I think this takes time, and it sometimes also takes a safe space for processing, people who really look out for your best interest and your kindness, to really get to a place of understanding what are those gifts, what are the things that I can appreciate from this thing that has happened that I didn't want to happen. So yeah, it was a great experience.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that now, and also sharing it then when you were in the middle of it, in the thick of it, in the tender parts of it. Uh, I was very moved by it and very inspired, because what you were demonstrating is your resilience, right? And all the tools that you've gained over the years through your life, and how you utilize them when the rubber meets the road.
Hmm.
Because it's easy to talk about that stuff, and I don't know, philosophize about it, but, but you did it in a really practical, pragmatic way, in moments of real life, real stuff. That's powerful, powerful testimony. What you said earlier about just how, when we're experiencing things like grief and loss, how important it is to hear from other people and the stories, and how we learn and we connect and we grow through hearing one another's stories. And it reminds me of how I was first exposed to the power of that when I got sober, many years ago, and I started going to recovery meetings. And it's all about sharing your experience, strength, and hope, and how we gain insight and strength and comfort from just knowing that we're not alone, no matter what we're facing. I mean, there's only so many things that we can face and experience in life, and I'm pretty sure that no matter what anybody is facing, somebody else out there has faced it too. And so it's great to know that, and also hear and connect to people who know what your struggles are, and maybe even can give you a blueprint to go from, maybe where you are now to where you would like to be or go. Um,
Hmm.
Although we're all different, and our processes are, varied, but yeah, there's so much that we all share that's common
Hmm.
than uncommon.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Again, that's one of the reasons why I really like TikTok, because you get to see, at least my algorithm is really great because I have wonderful people like you on my algorithm. Um, you get to see, I think, people from all different walks of life, from France to Namibia to, so I think technology has also helped in terms of us being able to see that as human beings having a spiritual experience, or spiritual experience being had by a human,
Hmm.
um, we get to see the universality, I can't even speak this morning, of some of the things that we go through. And, you'd said earlier that emotions are an energy, and they are. And so when we don't have spaces to share openly, if the environment is not set up so that we can share and let that flow through us, then that impacts us too. So that shared humanity and that ability to see that, okay, it's okay for you to cry. It's okay for there to be a space for your tears.
Hmm.
There's okay for there to be a space for your rage, for your anger. That is one of the biggest healers for grief, is just being given an open environment and a space to do that personally and in relationship to others. So, for me as a therapist, like, that's mostly what I do, is I just give people space to process. I'm not giving them magical advice,
Yeah.
telling them that, because they are the experts of their lives. But what I try to do is just create a space so that people can feel and validate that they aren't the only ones.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
I love that. Because I talk about this a lot, how important support is, how important social support is. And people need people. People need people. And that's a hard thing for some people, because I think there are a lot of people out there who are very isolated, introverted, and some of that could be as a result of just feeling hurt and losing trust.
Hmm.
But just anecdotally and also just statistically, we fare better when we have support, when we have people who can facilitate exactly like what you just said, what you do with people that you work with, or what I do with my work, and the community that I've been able to create, and be of service to, just that level of connection, shared humanity, shared burdens. Uh, it's transformative. It's transformative,
Hmm.
and it's so simple. It's so it's so simple that sometimes I think people are like, oh, that's just too simple to really work, to
Yeah.
be impactful. But yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
the simplest thing is what we need the most. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, as humans, we are designed biologically to co-regulate with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So when even if we sit, I tell people, one one friend of mine reached out to me and she was like, I have a friend who's lost everything. I don't even know what to say. I can barely, not cry when I look at her. So what do I do? What do I say? And I said, just sit with her and breathe. That's all we act. Our nervous systems will respond to that. One of the exercises that I teach people is to just look at each other or sit next to each other and just, breathe in concert and sync with each other. And sometimes, like in my couples work, I'll have them like raise their hands at the same time. And like that imitates their inhale and exhale. And the reason is because when we're able to meet on a neurological and energetic basis, our neurons are all energy, fire and energy. If we're able to meet in that safe and regulated space, then that is enough to calm someone. That is enough for someone to feel connected. We don't have to worry about the words and the right things to say or any
Yeah.
of that, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I love that. You just reminded me of a moment years ago. My mother was having surgery,
Mhm.
and she was nervous about going in for back surgery, and I was with her, and I just tried to get her to breathe with me. because she was moving around just sort of frantically, all this nervous energy, not breathing deeply, and just sitting and just breathing with her, and just 10 deep breaths together transform the moment. Transform the moment. And it's that, it was that simple. But we have to like stop
Yeah.
and do it. You know, we have to accept the invitation
Hmm.
and make space for it. But yeah, we are here to co-regulate one another. Yeah,
Yeah. Didn't you just do a video about practicing the pause? Did I just see that
I
like the past
did.
couple of days?
Hmm.
Yeah. Can you just talk about that? Because I do think an important part of 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 being able to feel your emotions regardless. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so I had this experience where one morning I woke up and I was really triggered by different uh, interactions I had with people via, you know, email or what have you, and I felt myself feel triggered and wanting to react and respond immediately, and something told me, Stephen, just wait,
Mhm.
just pause, take some deep breaths, give yourself some time and space to really tap into what you're feeling and the complexity of it. Um, Give yourself time to ask yourself some questions about, okay, is what you're feeling, is it true? Is what you're reacting to, responding to, is this true? Or are
Mhm.
you projecting? What is it? What is it? But give yourself the time and space to do that. And so the video was about that, and how also when I first got sober, one of the things that I heard was that with each year that you're sober, people say this,
Mhm.
that you get 1 second, 1 extra second of like pause. Because as an addict or an alcoholic or a person with substance use disorder, how we tend to react and respond to life is we want to numb how what we're feeling, um, and just react instead of responding thoughtfully.
Mhm.
And um, so we get a second of pause with each year. And so I just celebrated 21 years. So I have 21 seconds of pause, supposedly, that I can tap into to varying degrees depending upon the day. But that day I was able to really tap into it, and how that was a really striking remembrance and lesson of just how the gift it is to just give ourselves pause, because also very few things in life are an emergency. Things happen and we think we have to respond because it's like it's a crisis, it's an emergency, um, and very few things are that. And so if it's not an emergency, then there's no need to respond and react impulsively. uh, Give yourself time and space, because if you do give yourself time and space, what you're feeling is probably
Mhm.
going to shift and change.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
there's power in that pause.
Power in the pause. I have a thing to build off of that. And so you're amazing because it takes actually 90 seconds. This is science. This is my little science brain.
I love it.
Takes 90 seconds from the moment you realize you're having an emotion. So let's say sadness. 90 seconds from that, usually that thought that triggered the sadness, for that emotion to actually get processed through the body. That's how long it takes. Now,
Yeah.
if you continue to think sad thoughts or continue to ruminate on the sadness,
Yes.
then it's going to take longer to settle down. But let's say you just say, I'm going to shift my focus, or I'm going to focus just on feeling the, oh, hi, cute. I'm just going to focus on that sadness, right? If I just focus on that sadness and allow myself to feel that sadness for 90 seconds and not continue to add on with additional thoughts, then the emotion will pass. So what you said about your 21 seconds, you've narrowed that down. You could say you just need 70 more seconds now.
Yes, yes. And you know, that's brilliant. I didn't know that, and I think that's really powerful, and that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
The 90 seconds. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. This little furry creature that I have on my lap, this is BB, everybody. This is my little BB. She's got a sister named Obi, and they help me pause. They help me pause and just get into the moment, and we co-regulate together. And it's just such a powerful, powerful gift to just to help bring about a sense of presence. And that's what happens in the pause. You really tap into a moment of presence with yourself and this experience that you're having, and just how it's all very fluid. It's
Mhm.
very fluid if we allow it to be, right. I love what you said about don't start compounding more of those negative thoughts on top of that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
call it piling on. Don't pile on. Just
Yeah.
don't pile on. There's already been something bad up there. Don't add to it. Because then if you add to it, it's just gonna keep spiraling. That's
Yeah,
how it works.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's more to dig out of, more to dig out of.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ellen, I could talk to you all day. I could talk to you all day, but I won't. We shouldn't. We shouldn't, because we all have lives and stuff to do. Has your son knocked on the door yet?
He has not. Shockingly, I think it's because I told him I'd be done an hour later. So I think he's given me the exact amount of time that I need before an interruption.
And he's like this at the door waiting.
Right. Right. Gonna ride elevators today, mommy? Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Well,
Wow. Any
I
final
love
thoughts?
this. This was fun.
Yeah, I love it too. So great. I love this. We should do this more often.
We should. We're gonna have to well, leave in the comments anybody who's been here for a little bit
Yeah,
and say if there's something that you got from this chat just before we exit. I just want to see if anybody has any comments.
brilliant. Yeah.
Let me so let me do something else. Okay.
Oh, did we flip? We seem to have
Look,
flipped.
and I don't know how I just did that, but that's
I
good to
just saw
know.
this Showtime thing pop up, and then it flips like a disco ball.
I don't know what this means.
uh,
Okay.
any comments? Anything interesting in the comments?
I have not seen anything in the comments, just to join in.
Okay. Well, people can always comment later on this
Mhm.
video, correct? And
Yes.
the conversation will keep on going beyond the moment that we sign off. Yes. So anyway, so
Thank
great to
you,
see
Stephen.
you. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Thank you, everybody, for listening in and identifying in the ways that you identify with what we've just shared about our human experience that we're having. I can't speak this morning either.
See? It's
I need
Sunday.
another cup of coffee.
Okay, well, thank you, Stephen. And this was beautiful. I do think we need to do this again. I'm gonna do a little more technical stuff
Oh,
on the
you did
live.
great.
Figure it out.
You did great today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay,
All right,
bye
love.
everybody.
Bye bye.